Welcome to the Ultimate Beginner Quilt Series by Fat Quarter Shop. In this series, I'm going to be showing you how to make a quilt all the way from the start to the finish. This series is sponsored by Moda Fabrics and Eversewn Sewing Machines. I'm going to be giving you lots of tips, and we're going to be building our first quilt together. In this video of the Ultimate Beginner Quilt Series, I have Gina from Thread Graffiti, and she is going to show you how you make a quilt sandwich and how you put your quilt together and get it ready for quilting. And our subsequent videos are going to show you 2 different ways you can quilt your quilt. So let's get our quilt top all sandwiched up.
Hi, my name is Gina, and I am so thankful to be here. When the Fat Quarter Shop asked me to be part of the Ultimate Beginner Quilt Series, I was so excited because this is my favorite part. I'm a long arm quilter, and you can find me at threadgraffiti.com, but I haven't always been a long arm quilter. I learned how to quilt at home on my home machine doing straight line quilting and free motion quilting. And today I'm going to show you how to baste your quilt. I'm going to be using the cotton batting, the 505 spray, some tape for you to do your marking, and some pins. Okay, now that you have your quilt top finished, the options for you are you can either send your quilt top off to a long arm quilter and they can finish it for you. So if you're wondering what a long arm is, it's basically an oversized sewing machine that is attached to a frame, and it allows a person to load your quilt onto the frame, and then they can quilt it in sections for you. Or we can also do your quilting at home on your home sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how. Now we're going to talk about batting a little bit. This is an 80-20 batting. We just took it out of the package, and batting has a front and a back. And when you look at the batting, on the top part, it's going to look like there are holes where the needle has already been in to produce this. So it's going to look like there's holes on one side and kind of dimples on the other side. The other side has a type of adhesive. All batting kinds are different, but the side that has the adhesive side is where it's got the little bumps. That's going to be the bottom side. So you're going to want your quilt top touching the softer side that has the little dimples on it. Once we get it out of the package, we're going to open it up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to baste it. And the word baste means that we're going to take the quilt top and then the batting and then the quilt backing, and we're going to make a sandwich with the 3 layers. So that's called basting, is the actual act of making the sandwich and then basting it with either pins or the spray or both, like we mentioned just a second ago. So we're going to show you that. The first thing that I do, whether you're going to be quilting on your home machine or on a long arm, is I always press it. You can press it to make sure that there aren't any seams that you've missed or any mistakes. When you press it, that's kind of a time that you can review and make sure that you're ready to go. And we don't need the batting right now. So what I do when I iron press is I unfold so that it's half, and then I start at the top and I press going down so it's double, and this just kind of saves time. And also, if you don't have a ton of space or you have a much larger quilt, this is, and then I just roll. And pay attention to the big, more obvious seams. The rest of them are going to be okay. And once I get done with it being folded, then I just unfold it and then do that the main seam in the center. And if you just made yours, you probably won't have fold marks like this. But it's always a good idea to press before you get ready to baste so that it's very flat. That will give you the best results. Okay, Now we have our top done. And I usually just hang it over the side of something to get ready to do your backing. And the backing I do the same way. I just press it doubled and then just do the main seam down the center. Okay. I do also want to mention that on your backing, when you're pressing, since you have one main seam down the center, you should make sure that when you unfold it to do the main seam this way, just pay attention to the bottom part to make sure that your seam is going one direction or the other or pressed open. Whatever you've already done if you want to do. I usually press mine open, but there's not really a right or a wrong. You can usually feel with your hands if it's okay. That was fun. Okay, now we are ready to start getting the 3 layers together. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this. Most people do not have a large table. If you want to use your kitchen table, your dining room table, the floor, there's many different ways. I usually would put them on the floor and then use tape to tape the 4 corners onto the floor. Today we're going to use this large table, so I am going to use some masking tape to tape the 2 top corners to the table here so that it doesn't slip. And when you do this, you want to make sure that it is as taut as you can, as tight as you can, not pulling it so that you're stretching the fabric, just pulling it so that there is a nice flat surface here. And then the next layer is the batting. And what I sometimes do with the long arm is I will fold it in half and mark the center point, and then I will also fold in half the batting and put it at the center so that you make sure to cover that your quilt top isn't lopsided. But when you're doing it at home on your home machine, it's not going to matter as much because you don't need that overhang as much. With the long arm, you have to clip it to the frame, and so you need that extra amount of backing. And with the home machine, you really only need an inch or so on the side. It does shift a little bit, so that part's not as important as far as lining up the batting and the backing. Just kind of try to eyeball the center, and since it's been folded, there's already a mark. And we are going to lay it here on the table. And everything that we do in this step, we want to make sure it is flat. And it's not necessary to iron the batting. Those seams are okay. I feel a little ripple right here. Okay. And so what I normally do then is I get this section flat so that I can work on one side and then work on the other side. So this way we can just pull it, spray just a little bit, and then fold it back over. At this point, there are many different options. You can use a spray baste, you can use just pins, you can use the needle and thread and just lightly, baste with a needle and thread. So there's several different options. If you do use the 505 spray or any brand of spray, you do want to use a well-ventilated area. Make sure you're in a well-ventilated area and try to make sure that you don't spray off of the quilt edge because it could leave a sticky residue. So I usually just lightly spray, and then I also use a couple of pins. That's always worked best for me. So since I folded this side over, we're just going to spray lightly. And then fold the batting back over. And you don't need as much spray on the back because we're also going to spray the front to the batting so that you've got just a little bit on both sides. And then we're going to pull it this way. Do just a little more on this side. We're going to flatten that out a little. And then we are going to take the two sides away from the masking tape, and then we're going to just hang this over the other side of the table and work on this corner. Okay, now we've got the other side done, and we've just pushed this over, and we're going to put some masking tape on the other two sides. And if you're on the floor, you'll want to do the tape on all four corners on the floor, and then just do it as one piece. But if you're on the table, you'll want to work in sections. Okay, so we're going to roll this a little bit. We're going to get our spray out. And then we're just going to roll it back. Make sure that we get it smoothed out. And then we're going to spray this last front section. And again, if you see some little ripples, it's going to be okay. All right, so we're going to take this masking tape off the side now of both sides. And then we're going to go back and work on the first section that we did. We're going to pull it back. And then you can probably reuse your same tape. And then we are going to put our quilt top over the top. And again, like I talked about with the center, if you want to just try to make sure, and the reason why I'm saying that's because we don't want to make sure that there's too much space on one side or the other. You want to try to make sure that it's spaced out because the space on the side is important whether you're at home or on your long arm, because when you're sewing, it does tend to shift and move it a little bit. Not a lot, but you want to make sure that you don't just give yourself a tiny bit on either side, because it is possible that you could maybe run out if you don't give yourself at least a little bit of an allowance on the side. And then we want to make sure that we are to the edge, so we want to push this up just a little bit more. So we are going to use our tape again and tape our two sides. And as I mentioned, a good rule of thumb is around 5 inches all the way around on all four sides of extra. That's a good number to use. And then as you begin to quilt more, if you want to, decrease or increase that number, you can do that. Okay, so what I do is I just get it nice and flat. And then we're going to do the same thing. We want to make sure that it was flat. And then we're going to just gently pull it over. Use a little bit of spray. Flatten it out. And then at this point, I will put just a few pins. You can put lots of pins, you can put a few pins. It really just depends on what you feel most comfortable with. When you put a ton of pins in there, you just have to remove them as you're quilting, and sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge. So The reason why I use both is because the spray base will kind of keep it from moving around, and then the pins will keep it from really moving around, because when you get it under the machine, it does have a tendency to kind of move around. So I usually just do, I don't go all the way to the end because we're going to baste on the end, so I usually come in just a little bit, in from the corner, in the center, and then another one on this corner. And then you do sometimes want to put your hand under and just make sure from time to time that you got all the layers. I have done that before. Okay, and now since we're going to be moving this and advancing this, we're going to do another one here in the center. And that also kind of will let you know when you're moving it where you stopped with your spray. Okay, take it off and we're going to move it up just a little now. All right. Now, if you see we've got all these ripples, we don't want to leave it like that. We do want to smooth it out. And I usually pull it towards me like that, just with some arm motion. And then you can just gently pull it back. Lay it down. And then start in the center. And go out towards the edges. And then again, we'll do a couple of pins on either side. I like the curved pins best because they're easier to put through the fabric and to connect. Okay, now we're going to continue to advance. All right, let's smooth it all out. And you can put some extra spray along the edges if you wish, but that's why I like to do the pins, but it's completely up to you. All right, another one right here. We're almost ready to have some fun. Thanks for joining me, and please check out the next video on straight line quilting.